All right, so on the screen, welcome everyone to the June Focus Friday. I'm here with Renee.
Hello, everyone. Good to be back.
And on the screen, you have our housekeeping information. The session is being recorded. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A. If you just have a comment you'd like to share with everyone, you can put it in the chat. Presentations will be emailed to you early next week. So don't worry that we're going too fast or you can't follow along. You will get next week from me the presentations, and then you'll get a link to the recording also. So you can follow along again and go over as many times as you need. Am I forgetting anything? Oh, Summit. Summit's coming up in August 24th, 25th. It is in New York. And hopefully you can come and I can see you there. The agenda is live. You can go to ibi.com/events, go down to live events, and then you'll see the summit, and then you'll see the link for the agenda, which I think I have open. There we go. One of these in-person summits, and then you can click to see the agenda. There will also be an expert room. I believe for the expert room, you have to pre-register. So let Shay know if you have a topic or a problem that you want somebody to look at while you're there. And I'm not going to go over this, but just show you that it's here. All right. We'll start and jump right in, and I'll start talking about synonyms, master files. All right, I guess two Focus Fridays ago, I started talking about synonyms, and we started talking about the file segment in the synonym. So now we're going to jump to the next part, which is going to be segments, and then we'll conclude this with a third section that's going to talk about the field entries. So in a synonym, we had the file, which we went over last time, which is at the top of your synonym, if you look at it, viewing text. And then we have the segment areas, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So these are all your segment attributes. You have the segment name, segment type, parent. Those are pretty much going to be there all the time. If you don't have a parent, it's assumed that it's the child of the previous segment. So it's just a continuation, basically. The other ones you'll probably see, but not as often. And then there are more than what I'm showing on the screen, which you'll probably see even less. So the less occurring ones that you might see are occurs. If you have multiple occurrences or repetitions of data that you want to define in a segment, the data set, where that data physically lives, because it could live outside of the original data set. So it could be like an extension, almost like a cross-reference, but there is no key field. It's just all included as part of the original segment. Location identifies where it's going in the database, because you might have a group, you might have a field that's like an A30, but it's actually 3 different fields of A10. So you can then do that 30 as one allocation in the main segment, but then you can reallocate it as its own segment of only A10 and say that it occurs 3 times. But you need to specify the location pointing back to that A30 field. We're going to go through all this again. Position. Okay, we did that. Seg stuff. is kind of interesting because it's something that it's been talked about before, but I don't know if anybody actually uses it or not. But it's kind of cool what it does. So we'll get to that when we get there. And then we're going to talk about some cross-reference file information. So the segment name identifies a group of fields. Each segment has a one-to-one correspondence with each other. The alias of seg name is segment. For a focus database, you're limited to 8 characters. And for those of you who have used the product for a while, the reason being is because a focus database, when you have a segment, it creates it as its own page. So in the storage, we can only store 8 characters. For XFocus database and all other non-focus data sources, you're not limited. You have 64 characters. Well, I say you're not limited. You're limited to 64. Each segment should have a unique name. If you have a synonym and you have a segment name, you can change the name at any time unless it's a focus or XFocus database. If it's focus or XFocus, you can't just arbitrarily change the name. You would have to unload the data, change the name, and reload the data using the rebuild reorg. Segment name equals dummy used for multi-record type files. So if you have some data where one record is not related to the second record, you can then create a segment dummy and then have your record 1 that goes to parent dummy, and then your record 2 that's completely unrelated also go to segment. Seg type. The seg type you'll see is something like an S with a number. It might be an SH with a number. If it's relational, it most likely will be S0. And the seg type is going to indicate how the number of keys in the segments that make that segment unique, as well as how the data is stored. Is it ascending, descending, or if it's unique, or it actually becomes part of the parent? All of that's indicated by the seg type. So if I have SH, it's sorted highest to lowest. If I have S, it's sorted lowest to highest. The N indicates how many fields make the unique key. So I have an S3, it means the first 3 fields in that segment comprise the unique key for that segment. S0 has no key, hence why it's used for relational data sources. All of the key information then is in the access file. U is unique, which means you have a one-to-one relationship to the parents. KM, keyed multiple, that is for cross-reference segments with one-to-many, as opposed to a KU cross-reference with a unique. DKM, DKU are the same as the KM, KU, except it's a dynamic cross-reference. And lastly, we have a KL extending from, I'm going to have to look at those. Those look like the descriptions look like they're similar. Oh, it looks like it's, all right, so this is a descending or a child segment from a KM, KU, DKM, or DKU. So if you have a segment, if you have a keyed segment from another keyed segment, then you want to use the KL or the KLU. The parent identifies the hierarchy. So if you look at the car file, we have the origin is the main segment, which has country. And then we have the car, which has the car value, which then is a child of origin. So in the car segment, it's going to say parent equals origin. We support multiple roots. Once you have a synonym, how can you look and see what the synonym is composed of? or if the synonym has any errors. So this is the employee master. Well, this is the bottom part of the employee master. You can run a check file. So check file employee, just as kind of a syntax check. So in this case, it says number of segments is 11. Real of them are 6 and virtual are 5. So what we're showing on the bottom part of the employee mass are the KU and KL and KLUs. So those 5 represent the virtual segments because they're not part of the physical file. They are cross-reference files, as you can see from the CR file in each segment line. Okay, check file, you can also look and see the file structure. So you can do a check file car picture. So here we have country, and then under, can't really see the origin in there, but it's in there. And then comp, and then car wreck, and then warrant. Those are all the seg names. So in this case, comp says parent equals origin. Car wreck says parent equals comp. Warranty also says parent equals comp because it's directly under that segment in the picture. So we have the segment name and we have a segment number, but I didn't mention that we had a segment number. So the segment number is something that's calculated internally based on the retrieval of the data. So in this case, origin, since it's the first segment, and to get to all the other ones, we're going to have to go through there. That's segment 1. Comp is segment 2. Car wreck is segment 3, looking on the right. And then warranty all of a sudden is segment 6 because there are other segments which we're not seeing that come after model. The key fields are shown, and the seg type, the S1, is also shown. If a particular field is an index, and just be careful because an index is not the same as the key, we'll show that also. Let's see, question. Can you do these operations, check file in Info Assist or Developer? Not directly. Renee, is there a way to, if you're looking at a synonym, to do a check? I know back in App Studio you could.
No.
No. At best, what you can do is open up a new procedure in the text editor, and then you can type a check file there and run it.
Exactly.
Good question. All right, occurs. Occurs tells how many times you're repeating. So occurs equals n is a fixed number. Occurs equals field name says that it's variable and it's variable based upon another field that's already been defined. And then occurs equals variable says it could be any number of occurrences. Occurs equals variable is generally used for a variable length data set, which is mostly used on mainframe. But you can have them on PC. So we're going to look at some sample data structures. So in this case, I have A, B, and then I have C1, C2, and then I repeat C1, C2. So if I look at the structure, I'm going to have A and B could be in one segment, and then I have C1 and C2 in another segment that then occurs 2 times. The resulting synonym would look like this. Segment 1, field name A, field name B. Segment 2, parent of segment 1, and occurs 2 times. Looking at A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, 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 B1, B2, and then I have 4 C1s, and then I have 2 D1s and 4 E1s. So if I look at it like this, where I have segment 1 is going to have A1, A2, Segment 2 is going to have B1, B2. But notice that we have B1, B2 right after the A, and we have B1, B2 right after the C. Or is it? So if we do the C after the B1, B2, and say that it occurs 3 times, then that will take care of that. And then we go back to the B. So I got B1, B2 again, C1, C2. Eventually I get down to 1, 2, 3. I get down to the D1. So segment 4 is going to be D1 and segment 5 is going to be E1. So in this synonym, I have segment 1, and then segment 2 is a parent equals segment 1, and it occurs 2 times, and it contains fields B1, B2. Segment 3 has a parent of 2, and it occurs B2 times. So B2 is a field which is identifying how many times C, or segment 3, is going to occur. Segment 4 has a parent of 1 because we're going back to the A1, A2. It has a parent of 1 and occurs of A2. So again, it's a field, so it's variable based on what the data value says. Lastly, segment 5 says occurs equals variable, which means it's just going to do E1, 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 E1 until the end of the length of the file. All right, so location, you have up to 64 locations. Separate. So here I have a people record that has a social security number, a name, some history, a job record, and a school record. So in this case, I have file name equals people, seg name equals SSN rec, which contains the social security number. It's unique because technically only one person can have a social security number. It's the parent of SSN rec. I'm sorry, the name rec is as a parent of SSN rec, and it's unique, and this has the last name. Then I have segment name equals histrec, which is also going to parent SSN rec, but this time it says location equals hist file. So all of the data, that date field that's happening, and also the histrec is all, the job rec has a parent of histrec. So the hist file, the histrec, because it's in a hist file location, the physical data will be stored external in its own database. And that database will contain only the histrec segment and the job rec segment. Because the SKREC is parent of SSNREC, then that's part of the original structure, so it's not in the location. So position, let's just show it because I think that's going to be easier. So here in this data source, I have A1 and then Q1, 1, 2, 3, 4 times, and then A2 and then A3 and A4. So as long as these Qs are fixed length, I can then say QFill is going to have a usage of 832 and actual of 832. Since there's 4 of them, that's implying that each single one has 8 bytes or 8 characters. In order then to get each individual value, we create a secondary segment, segment 2, that has a seg type of S0, parent 1, and we're looking at position of QFill. So basically what I'm doing is I'm taking those 32 characters and I'm redefining them into sets of 4. So that way now I have Q1 4 times. So Q1 is each 8 characters, or 8 bytes in this case. So 8 times 4 is 32, and it takes up the entire queue field location area for the position. So it's a great way if I have a group of data and I want to go ahead and then put it into a segment and reference things by its own field. So you might have months of the year. So you might have 01, 02, 03, 04, 05. So 12 months, 2 characters is 24. So you might have that all string together into one field, and then you can separate it out into just a month field. So this is an interesting combination. We're going to use that location or the position and use it in conjunction with this seg stuff. So if we look at this file, I have a country and I have latitude and longitude. Simple enough. So I'm looking at 3 fields. The latitude and longitude by itself is comma delimited. We might look at this as country and coordinate 1, coordinate 2. So if I look at it this way, I have field name, comma 1, seg name COU, seg type equals S1, field name country, no problem. And then I have field name length, LNG, LAT, for longitude, latitude, and it's an A25, which means that the data, the minus 64.000 to the end, is 65 characters long. There's a comma, so that's 24. So each coordinate then would be 12 characters. 12, 24, 25. Yep. But that might not help me at all because I want to separate the two positions. So what I can do then is create a new segment, comma 2, say that that new segment has a seg suffix of defect. So I'm telling it it's a delimited fixed file. The parent is COU, and the position is LANG which is the full 25 characters. But now I'm redefining that as award, and it's going to be, actually that should be usage A12. Because actually it doesn't matter if it's A25. It'll take the 25 because it's comma delimited. It'll only read 12, and then it will add the rest of the field. So this will work. I probably wouldn't have used the full A25, but it will work. In order to get this to work properly, you need to have an access file, and the access file. Okay, why does this not want to go back? Okay, make sure I'm still sharing. All right, we'll leave it like this, I guess, for now. So it needs an access file. The access file for your defix for the seg stuff has to have an entry in an access file for that segment. So in this case, it's comma 2. And we tell it that the row delimiter is a comma, or the record delimiter. So that way we know to read to the first comma for the first field and then to the next comma for the second field. So in this case now, when I do a report and I say print country, print coordinate by country, I see coordinate 1 and coordinate 2 all under Argentina. So now you basically separated them. Yeah. All right, very good. All right, any questions so far? don't think so. Cross-references, we saw at the end of the employee master, we had CR file equals job, CR key equals job code. So basically the CR file references another synonym that describes the data that you're going to be pulling in as part of the synonym, kind of like a join. And then the CR key is what you're joining on. So the job code is a field that resides inside of both files. It's in employee and it's in job. It's in the job file. If there's no CR key, then it's just joined based on the location in the position. In newer cross-reference situations, you're going to see CR file. You're going to see something called CR include, which most likely will say CR include equals all. The CR include equals all says, go out to the cross-reference, and I want then to have access to all of the cross-reference fields. You can also set up a CR join type. How are you joining these files? Is it going to be a left outer? Is it going to be an inner? And then you also specify a join where, which dictates your join predicate. So in this case, I'm doing join where retail sales ID currency equals retail currency ID. All right, any questions? All right, next time we're going to talk about the field attributes, and hopefully we'll get to see you at Summit. So let me stop sharing. And Renee, take it away.
Thank you, Walter. Much appreciated. Okay, so let me share my screen. Give me a moment, guys. All right. All right. And you should be seeing the WebFOCUS Hub at this point. Just make sure it's expanded. Okay, so it's the whole thing. All right, so today's presentation is really about designer tips, tips, tricks, So there's an assumption that you know something of designer visualizations, but I kind of wanted to bring some things up that I had seen come across like in community or questions into support. And I thought it would be great to just highlight some of the things that customers have questions on in just one session. And again, of course, this is being recorded, so you can go back and leverage and go over the information I'll provide. But I'll try to do it in a way where I can get through everything in the time allotted and give you a lot of great information. So the very first thing, I am in WebFOCUS release 937 in the WebFOCUS Hub. And the first thing I want to talk about is actually enforced paths, something you might not be aware of. It's available in InfoAssist too. But there is an option where an enforced path basically says if there's any joins in your data, we'll automatically check to ensure all the fields are connected. And if a field is used basically from one table, but that is not joined to another table, those fields are being used, then it doesn't allow that field or those fields from that disconnected table to be used, right? Ensuring that your request is going to run successfully. In fact, enforced paths also says if a field can't be accessed as part of a retrieval path based on what you've retrieved from that path so far as part of your request, it grays out and makes those fields unavailable for selection as well. So I just kind of wanted to demonstrate that point because it's come up, and it's something you could set globally as well for your users. So I'm just going to go to plus, create visualization, and I'll only use the car legacy file and WF Retail Lite in my samples today for your reference. Okay. So just give that a moment to come up. It's a little slow today. And I pick IBI, picking car. Okay. And let's create a visualization. And you can see I have car here. I'm going to just change it to be a standard report just for readability's sake. But what I say applies both to charts and report visualizations within Designer. And you can see here the dimensions. You can see kind of breaking it down from the segment to have country. I'll put that in, add car, automatically adds to the rows. If you're less familiar with Designer, in order to add fields, you can drag it into buckets as appropriate. You can drag it onto the canvas. You can right-click and also add to chart or to report, or just double-click and let it go to the appropriate bucket where it deems that it should go based on the nature of that field. So I did country and car. And now you notice that for car wreck, warrant, and equip, they're both at the same level, right? So these are different paths. And you can see model and then down to body type. And if I expand warrant, you have warranty. So let me put model in. No problem. I can see my preview output. But if I were to add warranty at this point, it gives me an error message telling me something went wrong, and it tells you FOC 029, all sort keys are not in a single top to bottom segment path. Basically, I'm retrieving and trying to sort across multiple paths. So it's telling me I can't do that. But there's a way that you can actually avoid that scenario. So let me just clear the buckets and go to the car Synonym here in Designer. And there's a bunch of options, and I've gone through these in the past. You can do fold or flat view. You could, whether or not you split dimensions or measures, what you show. You want to see the path and the name, I just have title. But there's this enforce paths option. Notice that it's unchecked. By default, it is unchecked unless it's set globally. So I'm going to actually select that. So now when I come, I can see it's actually selected. And now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to select country, and then I'm going to put car. Here in my rows bucket as sort fields. And now I'm going to select model. The moment I select model, now you can see warrant and equip, which are on different paths now, but because I select model, I'm on that path. It says, okay, I'm going to disable it and not let you have access to those fields to avoid that exact kind of error message we just ran into. It could be very, very useful feature. Now, again, the user has to know and set that, but you can set it globally. And just to demonstrate that point, I'll close this out and I'll go to the administration console. And you can see here, I'm already kind of there, right? I scroll down to InfoSys properties. I understand. I know this is Designer. Designer properties just has certain things related to live sample data and everything. But InfoSys properties, certain things do apply. And one of them is if you go down all the way to miscellaneous, the very bottom, enforce path, and enable path enforcement, I can check that. Save it successfully. Clear cache. Okay. Now let's come back and let's create a brand new visualization, and I'll do the same thing. I'll go into IBI SAMP with car. Just give that a moment. Come up. And okay, got IBI SAMP. I'll select car. And I'll do the same thing. I'm going to just make it a standard report. And you'll notice here now that that's actually checked and enabled. I didn't do that. When I came in, it was that way. And I'll do country and car. And you can see they're available right now still. Why? Because I haven't gone down below that path in terms of sorting. So I'm going to put model in, and you'll see it also disables automatically. So it's, again, maybe not necessarily for everyone here on the session from a user level, but it might be something that you can discuss with your administrator to see if that's something that's not being done, or if it is being done, letting people understand that that's what it is. And it's actually been very helpful and useful for customers. So I thought it was worth mentioning as a possibility to kind of avoid the situation where a user runs into errors that they don't really need to, because if something's not available, again, this was a simple example. It's not a join example. This is just pathing with sorting as an example, but certainly I could have had a cluster joining many different tables, and if for some reason one of those tables is not available, it's going to be grayed out, and they're not going to allow those fields to be displayed. Very, very useful feature. So I'm just going to close this out and just come back into my environment just to set it back up and come back to what it would be by default, but not necessarily in your environment. You might already have that available, but again, a great feature that, again, is not just for, like I showed it in my example with a car file where there's no joins being taken place, but it's just a hierarchical structure, but with different pathing. But it can also impact join structures as well if those tables aren't available. Again, wanted to stress that point. Okay, so that's one little feature, not so little, but actually useful enough. My next sample I want to do is I'm going to create a new visualization, and this time I'm going to use WF Retail Lite. And with this one, I just kind of want to showcase a few things with new features with 936 and 937 that really make the usability within Designer a lot easier for the user, in my opinion. So, and these were customer requests. So customers really wanted these features. So WF Retail Lite, I'm going to select. I'm going to create a brand new visualization. I'll leave it as a stack chart. And for here, let's say I'll put revenue in. We'll just double click because it's a measure. It goes into the vertical. But starting in 936, you can multi-select fields. So here I could do, MSRP, control gross profit. Kind of put that up here. And you can see I'll put that in there. And I was able to multi-select. Now, the multi-select works, but if it's something where only one field can go into, it'll let you know that and only select maybe the first field that you're pulling in. Certainly, if I wanted to, I could reorder these things, the fields as well, right? The measures that are in the vertical bucket. What else? I can certainly, let's add product category in as a horizontal because it's a measure, a dimension. It comes in, you can see blue, right, for our dimensions, blue for our measures. And what I wanted to showcase is I just created this, but I haven't really created any kind of calculations and everything. The WF Retail Lite has a lot going on. And we actually have calculated fields within the Synonym. And we created this feature in 936. If you come on also onto the name, the master name, the Synonym name, WF Retail Lite, and click it. Showcase before with enforced paths is show calculations only. Because the Synonym actually has calculations at the Synonym level, I haven't even created anything within the tool yet. I can highlight that and just have those displayed to me if I want to pull them out. It's an easy way, an easy mechanism, especially if I have a lot of fields to go through to try to locate what I want. And in 937, we actually even put these little icons to kind of make them stand out. Now, if I were to select a Synonym that didn't have any calculated fields, then I wouldn't see that option until I created a field within that visualization. So let me just go to plus, create visualization, and I'll select the car file, which I know for a fact doesn't have any calculated fields within the Synonym. And just give it a moment. Again, network is just a touch slower today connecting to my environment. I'll select IBI SAMP and car. And now when I select car, you'll notice I don't have that show calculation only option. But if I were to build this visualization and I created a calculated field, it would come up and display that. Like a defined field, it would at the data source level, it would display those fields. All right, so let me just close that out, come back to the WF Retail Lite one, and then I'll come back and actually uncheck show calculations only. But it's an easy way, again, that's a 936 feature, to kind of pinpoint where those fields are, particularly if you, and again, WF Retail Lite already has calculations in the Synonym, so if you do, that's one thing, you'll see that available automatically to you in 936 and higher. But if the Synonym doesn't, then until you create a calculation, then that'll become available. Now in 937, here's something a little bit more that we did. So let me actually go to measures, and let me, I'm going to go to gross profit. I could do it here and add a calculation if I wanted to, or I can right click on gross profit since I'm going to use that anyway. And I can add a calculation here, and that'll put it in actually into my expression. And then I'll just do minus, let's do parentheses here. I'll put in revenue. Calculation doesn't matter so much, just that I could create it, right? Times 0.30. And let's change the name, and I'll call this adjusted net profit. The title will change as well. And then here I have my little format icon. If I need to account for missing, I can check that as well. Click the format, the number, the $, 20 is great, 1,000 separated looks good for my format, so I'll say that. And then just, I always like to validate, get my little check, I look good. And notice now when I created that expression, it brought me and put the focus right on that field that I just created. That's a 937 feature. Prior to that, it didn't. And sometimes within folders, it'll expand that so we can showcase the field to you. with a calculation that you created. But again, now if I were to go up here to W3 to Light and check show calculations only, I'll see the calculated fields from the synonym, but now I'll also see the field that I just created, adjusted net profit. Right. So again, some things just to make it easier in terms of development to be aware that these features exist. I love the show calculations only because it really can, especially if you do have a large number of fields to pinpoint. And then 9 through 7, putting the focus directly on the field that we've created, I think is also invaluable because chances are if you create it, you're probably going to be putting it in your request at that moment too. But you don't have to, but at least to put the focus on there so you know where it's at. So, okay, now that I've had this and I created this, let me add that field and just double click and I'll add it as a measure. I'll take off show calculations only so I can see my complete field list. Because it has negative values, you can see the impact to the chart. So one of the things I wanted to go through, because we still get some questions related to this and to support, is what if I have a field that won't go into a particular bucket when I'm dealing with charts? And what I mean with that is maybe I have a dimension that I really want to treat it as a measure, or I have a measure that I want to treat as a dimension, right? So in this case, and this is strictly for charts, it's not for a standard report or grid, a table file, strictly for charts. You can see I already have product category here in my request as a dimension. But what I want to do is I want to showcase the count of that in the tooltip. How do I accomplish that? Well, product category is already in there as a dimension, and product category is a dimension field. But if I want to add it and calculate and manipulate it as if it were a measure, I can right click on it and say add as measure. Now you can see what it did was, because it was a dimension, add as measure, it does it as a count, right? Because it's an alphanumeric field. And we restrict what you can do in terms of aggregation, but if I right click on that field, I can actually go to aggregate and you'll see count, count distinct, or percent of count. I'm going to leave it as a count. And because I want to run as a tooltip, I'm actually going to drag that down now. So it puts it where it normally would think you would want it, but now I can manipulate and put it into my tooltip. And certainly if I were to hover, you could see that, but I don't like the name, the naming of it. So I'm actually going to rename that and I'll just call that count. Whoops, sorry. And I'll be count, PCAT. And maybe I'll even reformat that. You can't really see with the values kind of low because I have limited data, live data. But what I'll do is I'll go to format data and maybe I'll make the max of this 11 and I want to show the thousand separator. And while I can't see the impact really in that in preview, definitely if I were to run this at this point, I would see the impact of it hovering over, right? You can see the thousand separator. My rename looks good. Everything looks good. So that's one example. So what if I had the opposite scenario? So let's say I want to remove product category as my horizontal, and I want to add cost of goods. Now, if I just double click cost of goods, where is it going to go? It's a measure. It's going to add it on into the vertical bucket. I'm going to remove it because that's not really what I want. But I can right click it because it's a measure and say add it as a dimension. Now, if I had something in the horizontal bucket, it'll go into the color bucket. But since I don't have anything in horizontal, when I say add as a dimension, it puts it into the horizontal bucket. Now, you can see that I have live data 1,000 and there's cost of goods. I have 16, 23, 32. You can see this becomes a little bit unmanageable from a display, for readability purposes. And maybe this is what I want, but that's, again, this is only a limited amount of data I'm looking at and I can already see that's not ideal. So this leads into one of the features I love to talk about, and that's dealing with bins and grouping, that capability within Designer. So bins are used to group numeric values by the increment that you specify, right? So it allows you to view large amounts of data, just like we have in this scenario, right? Across measures or calculated measures, enabling you to analyze the trends and identify outliers. It's really viewing your data as part of a larger group, displaying ranges of data so it's more manageable, visible, and readable for the user. And bins are for numerics, And groups are for alphanumerics, where for dimension values and everything. And basically you can use these fields as sort fields to really kind of control the display. And the way we do that is with the floor function, which returns the largest integer less than or equal to a number. That's how we can accomplish it. But again, the tool does this all for you. So right now, this is kind of unmanageable. It's not really ideal. What I would like it is really in ranges of values. So I can actually right-click on cost of goods, and there's a bins value. Again, if it's a numeric, you'll see bins value. If it's an alphanumeric, you'll see groups, right? And it'll default to width. If you select number, you're just selecting a number of bins, and it puts that on the by field. I'm not going to showcase that, but that's certainly an option. But where I see a bigger use and definitely a lot more that you can get out of it is keeping the width, the bin type of width, I'm going to change the bin width to 250. And I'm going to keep it as a range. When it's a range, it's an alphanumeric. When it's a value, it'll be a numeric. So I'm going to keep it as a range, and I'm going to say, okay. You're going to see here, it created this field, cost of goods, US bin 1. You can see it's an alphanumeric 250. And before I even show you the code, let me just drag it and put it right on top of and replace cost of goods with that. And you can see it created these range of values. One of the things you'll notice is what it did is it created the sort, because it's an alphanumeric sort, is not exactly ideal for what I want, right? I want this 250 to 500 to be right after the 0 and 250, unless I'm doing some other kind of sorting by total or something like that. Okay, not exactly ideal, not exactly what I would want. And just to showcase it from a source code perspective, let me go into the outline. And so you can see here, again, I don't expect you to understand the code necessarily, although there's quite a few coders out there, so you'll understand it, of course. But you can see floor is used, but then within that, we're creating that alphanumeric range. So ultimately, it's an alphanumeric 250, but it is looking at the values from the cost of goods to be able to calculate those ranges, right? And it did it automatically with a simple a few selections in the UI. Really useful. It'll take you a little bit more time to code this, even if you knew what you were doing. So let me close out the source code and come back here and say, okay, well, the sort is not exactly what I want. What if I were to do this? Let me get rid of this from my horizontal. Let me add cost of goods back in as a dimension. It'll go into the horizontal bucket. Not what I want, but let me hide it. I know I can hide a field, right? I can hide that sort field. And now let me put in cost of goods, that range that I put in. Well, preview kind of looks good, right? It's okay, but remember, we're using cost of goods that has individual values. Let me run it and show you going against all of the data. And just give that a moment to run. So it'll display. Now you can see it created my ranges, but notice it keeps repeating them over and over. And that's because our high level value is the cost of goods. So for each one of those, the 16, the 23, the $32, etc., we're seeing that that's not really what I wanted to accomplish. But again, we can get actually what we really desire. It's just a little extra step. So here I'm going to clear out the buckets here from the horizontal. I'm going to right click again on cost of goods. I'm going to do bin values, but this time I'm going to keep it as width. I am going to do the bin width of 250, the same as what I did my alphanumeric range, but now I'm going to say value and click OK. Now you'll see it actually creates a field here. You can see the icon. It must be a number. If I hover over it, you can see it's a D22M. And now what you would see from a source code perspective is you would see it directly with floor without the alphanumeric, right, creating the range. Now I actually have a numeric that's actually binning the values at a numeric level. So what does that allow me to do? Well, coming back here, now I can say take the cost of the numeric, put that in my horizontal. Looks great. But again, this might be what I want. Maybe I want to see the values like this, but I liked having the ranges displayed to the user for this particular visualization. So I'm going to hide this. And now I'm going to bring in my original range. Looks good. But again, it looked good from preview. Let's run it and see what we get. And now you can see it actually did exactly what we were really looking for. And you can, I mean, obviously you can rename the field and everything like that. The things I like to stress, that certainly you can, swap the axes. That might make it really nice from a visual standpoint. And let's just run that without doing anything else. And we can see the ranges in order. But from a readability standpoint, I think it's even nicer. And again, because of the negative, you're seeing the spacing here. But then maybe I could go a step further. Just remember wherever your blue icons are, because we do the swap axis, the vertical rather than the horizontal now is the dimensions, right? If you click the little ellipse, wherever you see the blue you'll see I have sort by total value. I can put that in descending. It's going to change it a little bit now so that when I run it, you'll see the ranges aren't in order because now we're sorting by the total value. But a lot of it will look very similar. Look at just that finished running, but you can see some of the ranges, right, have changed and adjusted. Again, just showcasing some of the features that are there that you can take in and leverage. I'm going to remove the sort by total. I'll swap the axes back. And so I showed you with binning, an extremely useful feature. What about grouping for alphanumeric? So what I could do here for the horizontal is I could change this. And let's do product categories. So because product category is dimensions in alphanumeric, if I right click on that, I'll have an option group values. The UI is really very simplistic to try it for a usability standpoint. I can change this name. But notice that on the bottom, it lets you know the origin field. So you can see here, because if you're changing the name, then you might not know. So we always give you the field of what it's actually based on that you're grouping these values on. And then here's the list of the values. Product category only has 7. But what you can do is I can drag field on top of another to create a group. And then you see computers and accessories there. Or I could say camcorder, group that, and then drag media player into that group. Or again, television and stereo systems, I can do that, create another group. And then video productions, the last one left, I have this add to drop down. I could select that and put it into that, or I could have just dragged it into that group too. You can ungroup all if you want to reset. If I pick a specific group, I can ungroup it. I can rename it. If I pick rename, I'll just say something like that. I'll just do one of them. And you can see I have all the values. There is a show other, but I'm just going to click OK for this one just to showcase it. And now you'll see when I go to, because this is a different kind of field, it doesn't put the focus on it. But you can see now I have product category sort created. I can clear out my horizontal bucket. I can move in that field. It created my groupings. Of course, then I can certainly rename it. So I can call, product category groupings or whatever is appropriate. Okay. And just to showcase, before I do anything with other, let me just go to the source code, outline, right click content, use source code. You'll see it actually, if you don't use other, it will create 2 defined fields. The first one, it does a decode on the values that you group together. And then it'll say else default. And then in the second define, it'll check whether if it's default, then it just puts out that product category in case you had other values that you didn't add to groups. Else the product category sort, right, from the decode. Okay. Now, if I were, and you can remember, you can edit your bins, you can right click on the bin field, or in this case, the group field, and certainly I can come back to the listing here. Either way, I can say edit group values. And I just check other. And if I do that, you won't see an other group here displayed because there's nothing associated with it, even though I checked it and made it available. It will impact the source code, however, to be a single define, which I'll show in a moment. But let me come back, edit group values, and let me just take video production and add it to other. I just dragged it in. I could have did it also through the add to. I'll say OK. And now you'll see I have an other bucket that's displayed. And just from a source code perspective, I'll come back in just so you can see now it's a single define where it decodes all the values and everything else that's not in a group falls into the other bucket. Okay. And again, this is not restricted just to charts, of course. You have the capability of having this available as well as a report perspective. So certainly, you know, that's the case. And actually, let me just change this to, I can change it to a grid, just so that you can see that. And certainly if I wanted to resort this, maybe I would go right click on revenue and sort to sending. And what it'll do, because now I'm in a table request, it creates revenue, it hides it, but now it's sorted by revenue from high to low, because I said descending. And here, let me just showcase running it from fully run so that you can see it against all of the data, so you can see the full impact and the data values available to it. Again, I love the binning and the grouping options, and it's something, a really easy way to create sort fields to make your data much more manageable from a visual perspective, right, and an analysis perspective. Okay, so that was, I think, what I wanted to do for that option feature. And then my next thing is to simulate within. So I'm going to go plus create visualization. I'm going to pick WF Retail Light. Just give it a moment. And for this one, I am going to make it a standard report. And I'm going to pick, I'll select product category, product subcategory model, and I'll add revenue. And what I wanted to showcase here is I'm going to simulate within. Like I said, I would mention that, and that was something I wanted to do with the within clause, but simulate it within Designer using partition aggregation function. What's great about the tool in Designer, if you right-click on revenue, there are these quick transform options where we give you the ability to do a rolling aggregate, a moving aggregate, or cluster. So a rolling aggregate re-aggregates total values in the request at each sort value. A moving does it, re-aggregates subtotal values in the request for a fixed number of previous values at each sort value. And cluster partitions values out to a specified number of clusters, right, based on the nearest mean. And I don't want to get you caught up in all of that. That's just kind of giving you just the terminology of what's there. But what you might utilize a mode is rolling aggregate, right? I'm going to pick a rolling aggregate. I'm on revenue, sum, and I can break on none. And because I have product category and product subcategories, higher sort fields, model being the lowest wouldn't be on the list, I can do it on there. But I'm going to keep none. And I'll keep the original sort field that's based the space off. It's already in my request anyway. And I'm going to say OK. And it automatically creates this rolling sum going through. Now I want to just do the same thing just for time purposes. And quick transform, rolling aggregate sum, but this time I'm going to break on product category. Now I'm going to change live data to all, just so that you can see something consistent. And then I'm going to showcase it from a source code perspective. You kind of can see, right? Kind of really cool. When we go to the end here, you can see here, that's the total value of revenue across everything. And then each of here with PCAT, you're getting each of the revenues, right, added up within that product category, and then it resets to the next when the sort field value changes. Did that automatically. So let me go into the outline and the view source code. And you can see there's two computes here. I'm highlighting that one. That's table. That's doing the rolling aggregate across the whole, you know, without not being within any sort. And then this one is doing it within product category. And it's the field, what your sort is, then whether you're beginning and C, you know, there's C and there's E, there's different options. C ends the roll in calculation at the current row in the internal matrix, whereas E does it at the end of the sort break. And you'll kind of see the difference. But I'm actually going to copy this. The point is that the tool gives you the option to create this without you having to go through the process of creating the function for yourself, right? But I'm going to copy that function because it's very similar to what within would be. All right, I'm going to close out the source code. And then I'm going to right-click on revenue. And I'm going to add a calculation. And I'm going to paste what I just created through the tool for the quick transformation And within can be simulated just by changing it from a B and an E, right, to be for the end of the sort, and sum has to be the operator. And this will simulate exactly what within would do with a sum, right? And let me just change the name to revenue or within underscore PCAT. And I'll do revenue within PCAT. And let me just change the format. And make sure actually, and I'll increase it so it has enough memory. You always want to make sure you account for enough space for the totals. And I'll validate. You can see the source code there. I'll show you one more time so you can have it from the recording perspective to look at it. And okay, but you can get it from the quick transform and just make the change and just show it to you, and with just a simple change. And I'm going to say okay. And now you'll see when I add that, you'll see now it's just going to give the same value, which is the total value on each of the rows. But that's really what within would do for you. Now I can actually do one more thing, and let me do an add calculation on revenue. I'm going to do the same thing, except now instead of breaking on product category, I'm going to say table to run through the whole thing. I'll make E for the end of the sort. I'll change this to be revenue within table. And I'll come back here within table and just rechange this format. And looks good. Validate it. Okay. And now what you'll see is you'll have it going across. It'll be just that total value, which you can see for every row. Now, necessarily, you wouldn't want to show this as a column like that. I know that, but here you can see that from the rolling sum that matches up. What I might want to do is hide that, and maybe I want to make that as a value that's in my heading. So I can write and edit the page heading, or it could have been a report heading, which we have now. And I could do retail revenue sales report, something like that, and say total revenue. And I'm actually going to just type it in, just to save time, revenue within table. And, maybe I'll highlight this and just make it center and just change the color just to do something else and apply it. And you might not see the whole thing at first because you got to scroll from a visibility perspective for the heading just to see. But if I, hit the little scroll bar, you can see that's there. And let me just, run this just so that you can see that impact. And certainly, like I said, I would hide this field because I won't want to show that. And maybe even the revenue within PCAT, maybe that's something I would want to do at a sort break level, which I won't do here for now for the purposes of this demonstration, but just to give you an idea. So let me actually go into the style sheet because I know we're running a little short on time, but these demonstrations are pretty quick. What I'm going to do is add just a few more fields to this. So I demonstrated within. Simulating is using the partition aggregation, but you have the quick transformations that really do give you a lot of capabilities. So let me just add a few more fields just to increase the width of the report. So maybe MSRP, gross profit, discount, cost of goods, right, and add that to the request. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to XLSX. For Excel. And for the format, I'm going to come to output settings and I'm going to change this to, I'm going to do a freeze for the column titles. And for general, I'm going to come back here for picking up a theme. But one thing I wanted to be clear about that I think can be a little confusing. When you're dealing with designer pages and portals, the theme truly is the style sheet and the cascading style sheet, the CSS file, the STY for the style sheet, the CSS for the cascading style sheet. But for a standalone visualization, really what we're picking up is strictly the style sheet. And you can see the default theme here. Like if I were to go to the hub and go down to global resources and go to themes, and select standard, you'll see the name default here. And then if I were to go into Designer 2018, you see theme.css and theme.sty. But what we're picking up for a standalone visualization, whether it's a chart or report, is really just the STY file, right? And there was a reason for this, right? Really, it has to do historically with what was available when you created a standalone visualization, right? So for that reason, that's why we have that there. So, so even though you're selecting a global theme and we say theme, it's really a style sheet, right? And you can see that from the include. And again, more for historical references. And we actually even give you a custom option so you can select from templates that we provided in the past, style sheet templates, or for your own. So here I'm going to pick something. Let me just run this first, right? So I'll leave it with Designer 2018. I want to run it as XLSX. And I'm going to open this file. And here you can see, right, the style, the column titles are frozen, right? Very, very nice. And again, maybe with Excel, I would have put it as a grid instead of a standard report, so these values would be here. But for the purposes of this demonstration, it really doesn't matter. So let me come back here. Now that I did that, I'm going to pick a different style sheet. I'm going to go to custom. I can pick the templates here, like in black and all of that. But I'm going to go to the repository. I'm going to go to retail demo. And I'm going to pick what was the EN warm style sheet with an additional attribute that I added, right? So this shows how you can customize your style sheets to pick it up within Designer to maybe demonstrate functionality that you might not otherwise be able to get within the tool. Now, I'm picking up that style sheet. I'll show you that in a minute, but let me run it so that you can see the impact to the request. It's a really cool feature too I'm showing, and I've shown it in the past, but I love this feature and I don't think enough customers are aware of it. So not only can you freeze columns in Excel, but you can freeze the sort fields as well, right? Not just the column titles, but the actual sort columns as well. So because I have it in the style sheet to freeze the first two, you can see the first two and then I can scroll through. Very nice, I think. And I accomplished that just by picking up the style sheet and changing it that has that feature there. I'm going to show that to you in a minute, but let me go to custom and repository, and I'm going to come back and I'm just going to pick up another version which has 3 columns to pick up. Now it's 3 columns. If I run this, it'll be all the sort fields of my request that will be frozen. And let me open that up. And now you can see that effect as well. Great feature. Now I'm going to come back and, let me just show you the source code. That would be nice, right? If I actually showed you the source code. I'll just show it to you for the one and come back to the very end here. So all that I did was this, and I'll just edit, is the only thing to enable that feature is at a report level, type of report, have freeze dash column equal to n and how many columns, and it should only be sort fields within the request. So I could have had n1, n2, n3. But okay, you would need a few different style sheets, but again, great control and gives you a lot of flexibility, I think, in terms of Excel output. But this is just to demonstrate how you can use custom style sheets and select them within your visualization to pick it up. Now, what about cascading style sheets? In this last few minutes that I have, just to go through it quickly, I'm going to close this out. I'm going to come back into Designer. I'm going to come back and actually select Designer 2018. I'm going to make this an HTML output. I'm going to just give that a second to edit. I'm going to edit the heading and maybe make 3 lines. Right, put the total on a separate, just to give something a little different. And I'm doing Designer 2018, but I'm going to come back here to output settings now because it's HTML. Maybe make it landscape. And I'll keep it freeze. I'm not going to do autofit. Autofit is a 937 feature. I just want to run it without autofit first so that you can see it. Very cool. You can see the column titles are frozen. Looks good. Like it. And then let me come back and now do autofit. So that adds autofit that's only for HTML within Designer. Run that. And now you'll see it autofit and it'll autofit within a container as well. So you can see the difference in the output. And now what I wanted to showcase is that we have the ability to pick up a different cascading style sheet. Remember, it's not going to pick it up if you're picking up a theme. It's really just picking up the style sheet from the include within the Focus app. But there is a set command UI that has CSS URL available to it. So I'm going to actually copy part of the URL here. I'm going to go to the set command. I'm going to check CSS URL. I'm going to paste that. I'm going to type run / at the end of it. And then in the hub, I'm actually going to go to my cascading style sheet that I want to leverage. And I'll go to properties and just scroll over just so that I can copy that. And close that out and come back into Designer. And I'll paste it. And I just need to remove that colon in the IBSF. Right? And then you can see where I'm picking up this cascading style sheet. I'm going to say OK. And very cool now. You're not going to see the impact here, but let's just run it and see what we have, right? It's really not so much what's in the cascading style sheet, just that it's being picked up. So you can see I have, but you can see the impact. You can see like a box shadow around and the coloring. And while this is stuff that you can impact within the regular style sheet and not necessarily CSS, I just kind of wanted to demonstrate the idea of it. If I come back into the hub, I just want you to see the actual code that I put in for the cascading style sheet, just so that you have it as a reference. But again, it's not so much about the code. It's about how you can reference and get what you need if you were to need a cascading style sheet. So let me edit here, and you can see I have a table. I didn't add any specific classes for this report because I hadn't coded it at a style sheet level to be picked up. But what I just did, the table, I did a box shadow so that I could put that around there. Where it shows you how blurry and spread out with the 20 pixels, 50% transparency. The margin around the table is 5 pixels. For the even rows, what the background color is, and the first child to get a background color of light blue. And that's how it impacted this specific request. Again, it's not really so much about the cascading style sheet code itself. It's the fact is how can you reference that within Designer? And to be very clear, remember, when you're in a standalone visualization, you really are picking up, even though it's a theme, you're only utilizing the style sheet from it. But if I want to access and reference a cascading style sheet, CSS file, then the way I would do that is through the set command UI, check the CSS URL, and point to it. And I can point to the theme.css that's in also the global resources, whether it's one of ours or obviously custom it would be, because why would you point to it otherwise? But you certainly can do that as well. So that was my demonstration. I hope you learned something from it and can leverage that when utilizing Designer. Okay. Was that good? Any questions?
Thanks, Renee. No, I don't see any questions.
Okay. Well, please let us know and fill out the surveys and let us know if this was the type of information you're looking for or what else you're interested in for our next and upcoming sessions. Thank you.
Thanks, Renee.
Thank you.
So if we're going to move into our mainframe part of the show, so if you're not a mainframe customer, feel free to drop off. If you do drop off, please remember to fill out your evaluation. And thank you for coming, and hopefully we'll see you next month. Just also remember that in August, there is no Focus Friday because of the in-person summit. Thanks, everyone. We'll give everybody a few minutes to drop off if they're not staying. Get my share ready. Okay, I think I'm set. All right, so for the mainframe part of the session, I'm going to talk about transferring files. Now, whether you're running mainframe focus and you have new license files that you need to transfer to your mainframe, or you're a WebFOCUS customer and you might have a CSV file that you have on your PC that you want to upload and incorporate into your mainframe WebFOCUS environment, that's what we're going to talk about right now. All right. So the basic transfer mechanisms, the easiest ones, well, I'm not gonna say easiest. The basic transfers from PC to mainframe are FTP, and there's a native FTP command line that you can do, or you can use a GUI tool like FileZilla, which lets you drag and drop the files across. That's what we recommend you do. There is also a thing that IBM has called IND dollar file, and that's when you use your 3270 emulator to send and receive files through the emulator window. For server or Focus Studio, we also have get data. And if you're just copying a procedure from, let's say, from your PC into WebFOCUS on the mainframe, it's probably easiest just to cut and paste. All right, so let's just jump in. So this is some basic FTP information. If you're doing command line, you say FTP space in the host name, and then hopefully it'll get prompted for signing in. What you see might be different because if your company has a firewall set up, you might have to log into one place first, validate, and then you can connect to the host that you're trying to go to. We no longer have our own FTP site, so when we're going to send you files via your case, and then you would need to download them from the case to your PC, and then locally from inside your network, you're going to go from your PC to your mainframe. Put local file, remote file. So if you're on your PC, you initiate the FTP on your PC to your mainframe. Then you want to put files from your PC to the mainframe. So you're putting your local PC file to the remote MDS file. Conversely, if you want to get a file or receive a file from the mainframe, you would do a get. There's also input and mget, which lets you do multiple files at one time. I'm not going into that, but it's available, and I'm sure there's lots of documentation out there. It uses wildcards, but just remember, if you do that, it's going to prompt you for each file, asking you if you want to transfer file 1, file 2, file 3. But then there's an option to turn prompting off, so that way it'll just do it automatically. You don't have to do that. Most of the time, though, you're just copying a couple files at once, so put and get are good. Bin, if you have a binary file that you're transferring, like in the license key situation, we have the folklive.xmit that needs to be transferred as binary. And then ASCII is for straight text that you can read, so that way we translate it properly so you can read it once it's on the mainframe. And that would be for something like the F-license, the F-license.data. How do you define a file in WebFOCUS when it is a database table? Is there a tool that can be used? What do you, I'm gonna need more information on that, Don. So how do you define a file in WebFOCUS? So it's a focus database? I'll tell you what, Don, let's get back to this and let me finish here, and then worst case is I'll have you put a comment on the evaluation or open a case, and then we can look at it further. IND dollar files are transferred via the TSO and 3270 emulators. And I'm going to demo that because we all like to do demos because you never know what's going to happen. And then we're going to use get data to transfer a CSV file from my PC to a WebFOCUS PDS reporting server. All right, so let's see how much trouble I can get in. A lot since I closed the wrong window. Minimize that. All right, so the first thing I said I was going to demo is the IND dollar file. So here I am in my 3270. In order to do this, I have to be at the ESO ready prompts. Not sure what happened there. And in my case, I'm using IBM's personal communication. Okay, I'm talking about defining. Okay, thanks, Don. So yeah, so if you want to define a SQL Server file, you would have to basically have WebFOCUS running on your local server that has access to the SQL Server. And then you can have your mainframe focus talk to the local focus. So that's called the hub sub setup, but that's perfectly doable. So I'm using IBM's personal communication. In here, I'm going to go to actions and say send file to the host. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer the flicense.data, which I put on my desktop. So that's the file we're going to transfer. All right, so let's come back over here. Actions. Now your system, your 3270 might have different if you're using AttachMate or you're using Vista. So in my case, when I say send to the host, it's actually uploading from the PC to the host. I've seen some where it says send, but it means sends. It was kind of backwards. So just make sure you're using the right options. So I'm going to send file to the host. I'm going to find my local PC file. It's on my desktop. And it put the host file as bin, and then it automatically set the transfer type to binary. So this is an F license, and F license is just text. So we need to make that text. I don't want to call it F license data or F license data bin. I'm going to just make it F license data. In my case now, I add it to the list, and then I can send the file. And if you notice, it issued this IND $file command, and it should be done. So now if I go to 3.4 and ISPF, I have a file here now. And if I browse it, it looks good. Now the issue though, if you're not careful, is a lot of times the files that we send you, like the XML files, need to be sent to a file that's 80 characters wide. So let's see what kind of record length this one did. Oh, well, this put it in a variable block 133 as opposed to a fixed block 80, which is what I really wanted. So let's delete this because it's no good right now. I mean, I could copy it myself in 3.4 and change it, but let's just do it all right from the start. So we're going to send again, browse the file, desktop. We'll change the name again. So if I did text, and then if I look at the options under MVS, I have a choice of text, which then has variable block 133. So if I change this, it's going to make me either save a new profile, or I can update text to always be fixed block 80. So what I did here is I changed it and created a text 2. Which is fixed. And I'm not quite sure why it took the record length off. But we'll make it 80. I want tracks. It's just not a big file. We'll make it 5 primary, 1 secondary. I don't care about block size. Uh, for some reason, apply isn't allowed. So let's save it. We're going to replace the one that already exists. Now I'm going to select for the transfer type text 2, add it to the list, and then send. Notice now it just says record format F. And now when I go into ISPF, my data is still there and readable, but now this time it's in FB8. So if you don't specify the record length, like it took it out because it was 80, it defaults to 80. All right, that was easy enough. No trouble there. And the second one is get data. So this is the fun one. So we had a customer that had a CSV file and they are running, they're running WebFOCUS on the mainframe, and they wanted to be able to transfer that file to the mainframe easily. Now I'm going to tell you, you have to be in a 9.3 version to do this. And I even want to say you have to be at a higher release level like 9.3.6. But what you get is they were trying to do plus data and do upload raw data. Now the problem with doing upload raw data from your PC to a mainframe is your PC is ASCII and your mainframe is Epsilon. So uploading it as raw data doesn't work well. So the better solution is to do get data, which is what shows you all your adapters. I'm going to select the limited file because it's a CSV. It shows me a list of all my local files. There we go. And I'm going to take this small W CSV, which only has like 2 rows and 3 columns. So it has the file name, the table name. This is the preview. It's got an issue type and an issue key. So it looks like there's only 2 rows and 2 columns. If everything looks okay, I am going to change. You can change your adapter. So this is just going to upload it as a text file, but then you also have the ability of putting it in any other data source. Actually, right now, this is only showing delimited, so maybe not. I'll have to double check that one. I'm going to put it in application base app, which is kind of huge. Let's put it in info cache since it's smaller. And then we can load it. Okay. When you choose the name of your synonym on the mainframe, I would kind of try to keep it less, 8 characters or less, just because it's creating a member in a PDS, and you want to make sure that you're not going to go over the 8 characters. So here now under FOCACHE, I have my small w, I have the data file, and I have the synonym. If I do sample data, I should see my 2 records. There you go. So 2 for 2, they actually work. Any questions on any of that? You can connect directly to SQL Server from ZOS using JDBC. You can, provided you're running the JSCOM, which means that you're accessing Java on your mainframe. but it's a good point. Thank you. I know like a lot of the focus, like if you're doing it from focus, you're not going to be able to do it because it's not a server, so it doesn't have a JSComp3. All right. Any other questions, comments? I don't need to find the file in Mainframe. I was asking about how to create a synonym. Oh, so how to create a synonym for a WebFOCUS SQLi. So if there's no other questions, I'm actually going to show that, even though we're past time. I don't have SQL Server done, but I do have MySQL. So it should be all creation of synonyms against relational data sources should be the same. So let's go to my server. So this is the reporting server on Windows. And I have, all right, so let's take a test. I'll take VUG. And I'm going to do get data. It's my SQL. And I want to use this connection. And if I double click, it shows me all of my resources on that I have access to on the MySQL catalog. So I should have an emp data queue, which is a relational version of emp data. So I'm going to take that. I'm going to put it in application VUG. You can put a prefix or suffix. So I'm going to suffix this with test, just so hopefully it'll stick out a little bit. So the final name of the synonym is going to be empdataQ _test. If everything looks okay here, we can do add. You can look at the data mappings and make changes as necessary. So let me do add. So now if I refresh this and do date modified, here's my empdataQ _test. And if I do edit as text, there's the synonym. And if I do edit access as text, there's the access file. So is that what you were looking for, Don? Hopefully. All right, any other questions? All right, again, thanks everyone for coming. Hopefully we'll see you in July. Again, nothing in August. Don't forget to fill out your evaluations, and thanks for coming.
Thank you, everyone.